Hi everyone. I heard Lush described the other day as a Vegemite company because people either love or hate the smell. But if you've not ever smelt us or heard of us, Lush are a company that specialises in fresh handmade cosmetics. We were founded in the UK about 22 years ago, and we were founded by a group of animal and environmental activists who didn't want to leave their ethics at home when they went to work. Those activists could probably also be called control freaks because they felt that to maintain their high ethical standards, they'd have to do everything themselves. So still to this day, we invent all our own products, we source all our own ingredients, we manufacture them in any one of 9 kitchens around the world, including one here in Villawood. And then we retail them in 50 different countries across 957 stores, with an annual global turnover of over $1 billion. We opened in Sydney for the first time 20 years ago in the QVB. Today we have 30 stores and a thriving digital business, and with global turnover, national turnover of about 70 million. So the Lush business was built on 3 main pillars. So we ensure absolutely that none of our ingredients are being tested on animals, and then actively campaign to end animal testing in the cosmetic industry. And in sticking to this principle is why we currently don't trade in China, where testing is mandatory. Instead, we just fund activists and scientists to lobby the government to have this changed. But unfortunately, I think change is a fair while off there. Secondly, in striving for a more transparent and regenerative supply chain, we invent products with little or no need for packaging and then ethically source our ingredients. And yeah, in striving for that sort of regenerative supply chain, we have been heavily investing in permaculture startups around the world. Really, we're trying to stop the cycle of poverty for farmers, and in some cases, even reverse environmental destruction through permaculture training and infrastructure. And then thirdly, what we're here to talk about today, Lush actively campaign on issues that we feel strongly about. So we use our stores, our staff, our windows, our websites, our social platforms, and any influence really, I guess, that the business has to campaign on issues, we feel strongly about. So, for example, a couple of years ago, we did a global campaign called Fair Trial My Ass, which was based on which was standing up for prisoners detained in Guantanamo Bay without trial. And some of the many other causes that we've campaigned on over the years include standing up for LGBTI equality, standing against bullfighting, new coal stations, puppy farming, overpackaging, internet shutdowns, drone strikes, and here in Australia against the horrific treatment of people seeking asylum here in Australia, which we're going to explore a little bit more today.
So who is GetUp? GetUp is a political campaigning organisation for people who want to have a real say in Australia's future. We are 1 million people who've spent the last decade disrupting powerful interests and who have a rock-solid commitment to fairness and compassion and courage. Our mission is to create a thriving democracy where everyday Australians can have extraordinary impact online, on the streets and over the airwaves. Our vision is a more fair, flourishing and just Australia, led by the values and hopes of everyday people. We value fairness. We want an Australia defined by social and economic equity, where everybody has the opportunity to succeed. We value a flourishing environment, a safe climate and a vibrant natural world preserved for future generations. We value justice, equality and compassion for all, no matter where you come from, how you worship or how you love. And we value a thriving democracy, where multinational corporations and lobbyists don't control our country, but where everyone's voice isn't just heard, it matters. Now, for the most part of this year, we've been running the Let Them Stay and Bring Them Here campaigns, and this video explains a little bit more what the campaigns are about.
By deliberately focusing our collective power where it will have the greatest impact, everyday people are playing a crucial role in making the detention regime more and more unviable. At the beginning of this year, we launched the Let Them Stay campaign. We wanted to see if we could shift pillar number 2, public opinion. The campaign focused on 267 men, women and children who were in Australia for medical care, but who risked being sent back to the offshore camps. We brought their stories to the public spotlight, and that human connection kicked off the single biggest change in public attitudes towards people seeking asylum in the last 15 years. Tens of thousands took to the streets as Let Them Stay became a mass movement, and that meant that the government didn't deport a single person, even though they had planes booked. Those 267 people are safe for now, and that means that it's time to go further. We need to reach a tipping point in public opinion that will force the government to bring the men, women and children currently on Manus Island in Nauru to safety in Australia. And now we know exactly how to do it, by telling the stories that break through the spin and speak directly to everyday Australians.
Working with the Human Rights Law Centre, we interviewed people on Manus Island. We talked to them about their experience, their hopes and their dreams. And of course, they're just like you and me. Now we need to tell their stories. The government has hidden these men's story from our view. But with your help, we can break that open and forge genuine connections between the people of Australia and those currently detained in offshore detention camps. And then we can build on that connection and start changing people's minds about this horrendous policy. The featured story on the Lush poster is Amir, a 23-year-old Iranian man who's always wanted to be a human rights lawyer. He speaks 6 languages and likes to listen to opera and trance music. When he was just 15 years old, Amir fled Iran because he was in danger for being part of a religious minority. He lived alone in Malaysia for 5 years as a child and young adult before he tried to seek safety in Australia. Instead of protecting him, the Australian government locked him up on Manus Island. We're featuring Amir's story in the Lush store windows.
In the A5 booklets, we'll be explaining the campaign, highlighting more stories, and explaining how your customers can take action. And this time, we've created a social media moment for your customers to take in store. There'll be big Bring Them Here signs, and we'll be asking people to take a photo with it and upload it to their social media. The Lush team will then be reposting it to your social media. We'll also be asking customers to text a number, which will send them a link to our campaign website, with more stories and more information about the campaign. Our message is simple. Amir and all the others imprisoned with him should never have been sent to offshore detention. They need to be brought to safety in Australia immediately and allowed to rebuild their lives. And policy must change so that history never repeats itself.
If we can change public opinion, we can open up political space for a proper debate and force the government to adopt a refugee policy that treats people seeking safety as the people that they are.
So thanks for your partnership, Lushies.
We can't do any of this without every single one of you.
With your help, we can make it happen.
So why did we want to partner with the soap shop on the Bring Them Here campaign? You may wonder. Well, like Aurora and Matt said, our aim was to shift public opinion towards people seeking asylum. Our research showed us that 20% of Australians likely were going to already agree with the sentiments behind Bring Them Here. It was the next 31% that we needed to win over to win majority public support. And the next 31%, our persuadables, include many Lush customers. Lush's demographic is the demographic that we needed. This slide shows our Facebook audience, and you can see that despite our youthful reputation, only about 25% of our audience is 34 or younger. Our typical GetUp member is an older female professional living in inner city Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane. Lush's audience, while also skewing female, is much younger, from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds and diverse physical locations. We also knew that Lush had the passionate staff, experts at connecting with customers, who could convey our Bring Them Here message.
So partnering up for us, so some of the reasons why we wanted to partner up with GetUp. Look, we know we have a very passionate and committed workforce who are willing to go to the ends of the earth for something that they believe in. Our staff are very young, with an average age of 23, and they tell us that values and ethics are the main reason that they work for us. They enthusiastically step up into becoming spokespeople, learn how to introduce an issue to customers, and engage in respectful conversation, even with people who don't agree with them. And we can see that this gentle form of activism really makes them quite confident communicators and empowers them to become a force for change. But we knew that we really needed to take our campaigning to the next level if we were going to start to have a little bit more of a broader and more powerful impact. It often felt like, we were just skimming the surface on the issues that we picked up and then put back down. We were all very enthusiastic and passionate, but we would often wrap up a campaign thinking and knowing that we could have done more and better, but not really sure how. Then, out of the blue, we were invited to GetUp's offices for a get-to-know-you meeting. And really, it was like a perfect first date. Really, as they explained who they were and what they believed in. Every single campaign that we had run over the years, so had they in some form, but way more strategically. We'd always partnered up with an NGO or a charity on single issues, but here we had an organisation who had everything that we were looking for. They had, the values were perfectly aligned. They were expert and professional campaigners with a deep understanding of the Australian public and the theory of change. So, like I said, perfect first date. Then we started sharing with them the campaigning that we'd been doing over the years in regards to people seeking asylum. And I think at the time we felt pretty okay about what we'd been doing. And, especially over the fact that we usually slotted one in about October each year. But then GetUp started talking about what they'd been doing in this space, and they had human rights lawyers working on it. Some of them had been working in this space for more than 15 years. They'd created an alternative migration policy and had it tested through focus groups. They'd run it by politicians and major influencers. And the last campaign that they'd run had resulted in 17 newspaper front covers and resulted in a 15% swing in public opinion. Then they proceeded to tell us where 2013 and 15, where we might have gone wrong in those campaigns and why they maybe weren't as successful as we wanted them to be. And I think it was at this point that we realised we had so much to learn from GetUp. And we were beginning to fall for exactly the right organisation. So the other thing that they introduced us to was a piece of research called Words That Work by Anat Shekhar-Ozario. And in this research, it really encouraged the use of people seeking asylum rather than asylum seekers. It encouraged the use of using the words reuniting families rather than people fleeing terror, and to talk about the individual stories of specific people to show that they're just like us, rather than overwhelming numbers and horrific human rights violations, which unfortunately the research shows turns off most Australians. And so this is what the Bring Them Here campaign was based on. Staff introduced the issue to customers, told the stories of the men on Manu Island, sold products where 100% of the sales went to either GetUp or the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre in Melbourne. And then they encouraged customers to engage and share social media through the campaign. Okay, the impact of the campaign. So, by far, of all the ethical campaigns that Lush Australia has ever run, the Bring Them Here campaign was by far the most successful in terms of reach, engagement and shop floor conversations, with more than 500,000 people being exposed to our message. And this is 5 times more than the last campaign for people seeking asylum, 5 times more reach and engagement, which was fantastic. And while the money raised for GetUp and the ASRC was helpful, clearly the main purpose of the campaign was actually just to try and really change the tone of the conversations around people seeking asylum and really appeal for a more humanitarian approach. Our sales and growth rates have been really high in our business for the last couple of years. We've had a like-for-like between 30 and 45% for the last 4 years. But for the month that this campaign was in our windows, sales like-for-like peaked at 49%. So most retailers, well, the average for retail at the moment is 4%, and most retailers are really overjoyed if they can hit double digits at 10%. For us, it is never the reason why we campaign on issues like this, but clearly it can make a really strong argument for other businesses that it is possible to be profitable and to campaign on hard-hitting issues at the same time. The exact impact on staff can sometimes be a little bit harder to measure, but we do know that the more we campaign on issues like this, the higher our engagement levels are across the business. And we certainly seem to attract a more ethically driven staff member and customer. Here's a couple of stats just from our most recent engagement surveys. I think at a really high level, we see that if you have staff that really care about the environment and human and animal rights, then you tend to have staff that really care about people. And we found that really, really translates well into great customer service because they genuinely care about getting it right for the person in front of them. And the more staff feel that their work has meaning, the more effort they put in. And that then has, I think that really tends to make the customer trust them more, which unsurprisingly leads to great sales. We have certainly lost some customers along the way who literally tell us to get our politics out of their bathrooms. But that's okay. They can go and buy soap somewhere else because the value of the customer that we do attract is tenfold. Now we recognise that issues as complex as people seeking asylum, they really need a more multi-layered approach, which is why we didn't just stop at trying to raise awareness. These days, about 30% of the staff in our kitchens out in Villawood are people seeking asylum or recent refugees. And a large majority of them, there is no way that they should be working in a factory. They're way more overqualified than that. But we're told that a job with a trusted brand as their first job in Australia is just a great way for them to get their foot in the door of the Australian workforce. And I have to say that they make the most hard-working and dedicated employees. And there are plenty of organisations and charities out there who can actually help transition people seeking asylum into your workplaces if you're interested. Some of the other things we do, we did a screening of the documentary Chasing Asylum at our managers meeting, and we had Eva Oriner, the director, come and debrief with us afterwards. And only last week, myself and about 20 of our shop floor staff in Melbourne, we went out to the ASRC in Melbourne and had some special training. It's kind of piloting this new training where we're learning how to really attach core values when trying to connect with people on this issue. And the other thing we practiced was a very, very structured conversation, which has been proven to have the best chance of persuading the persuadables. So really, on this issue, we truly are in it for the long haul, and we're really just trying to use, I guess, any resource or influence that we have to try and have a broader impact.
So impact from GetUp's perspective. First of all, we got Maja and Amer and Abdulaziz's stories out into the real world and out beyond the filter bubble. I already mentioned how we had Lush staff speaking to customers about these guys' stories, but we also had collateral in all their shop fronts across Australia. We had LED displays, booklets and posters. And hundreds of thousands of Australians would have been exposed to this stuff. We even heard from Amer that one of the Manus guards had been on leave back in Brisbane and seen his face in the shop window and reported it back to him in Manus. But I guess the greatest impact from our perspective is that we kind of had a win. Most of you would have heard last month that Malcolm Turnbull announced that the asylum seekers on Manus and Nauru would be resettled in the United States, so not exactly what we were after, and there are lots of technical issues with the arrangement. But we think we can call it a win. At the very least, it means babies like Samuel can grow up free in Australia or the United States.
Lovely. So some of the learnings that we've discovered on the path of forming a collaboration, definitely the key lesson for us has been the importance of forming collaborations with real experts like GetUp, the ASRC and Nat Shekhar-Azario, who wrote Words That Work. These guys really understand the subtlety of public debate, and really they know the best way to use your business as a tool. And in return, we've really found that they really help to increase the power, I guess, and the influence of your messaging and efforts, and really help to layer your knowledge and help you to really truly immerse in the issue. Whoops. Sorry. So for Lush, GetUp have truly changed the way that we campaign. I think in the past we'd pick a few issues at the start of the year that we really cared about and we'd just slot them into the calendar. But now we've learnt to be way more strategic and really try to get to the root cause of an issue, whether that be legislation or public opinion or hard right conservatives. And so much of what we do and being effective has to do with timing. And really having a campaign ready to go, but only slotting it into the stores when the time is ripe for change, when it's really on people's minds, or one of the blocks or things that are standing in our way starts to look a little bit wobbly. The other big lesson for us was the powerful use of positive messaging, and how much easier it is to engage customers and staff by telling stories based on shared values and vision. It certainly created a far more emotional connection between the staff member and the customer, and it really made the issue so much more approachable. The government have worked so hard at keeping these people's stories hidden and away from us. So by fighting that and really telling their stories, it really humanised the asylum seeker, and it tends to bring out a lot more people in society and in our communities who are willing to do something to help. Some advice for other businesses wanting to maybe start campaigning a little bit more. Certainly, none of this would be possible without the absolute commitment of our frontline staff. And I think a core part of successful campaigning definitely has to do with having aligned values with your staff members. And I mean, for Lush, this starts at the recruitment process, which I guess is, in a way, a reverse kind of discrimination, but we might just keep that a little bit quiet. But we certainly can see that we attract more like-minded staff and customers the louder that we are about what we believe in and what's important to us. But then their passionate attitudes tend to push us to make far braver decisions about what to stand up for. But staff really need to feel a part of the process and understand the why behind decision making, which is why GetUp ran a campaigning 101 workshop at our last managers meeting, which for about 100 of our managers and leaders through the business, they went through this workshop, and by the end of it, they had to pick issues which they felt really strongly about and shape some potential campaigns that Lush can run in the future. And they picked climate change, Indigenous equality, poverty, domestic violence, horse racing, greyhound racing, and bees. And so many of the ideas and concepts were fabulous. And we've just continued their work on by starting to connect with experts in the field, layer our knowledge, but we know that we'll only drop those campaigns into the stores when we know that we've got the best possible chance of having influence. Our staff, I think we'll get to the point of wrapping up really soon. Yeah, great.
To wrap from GetUp's perspective, in this Trump and Brexit era, we really believe that we have to be breaking outside those filter bubbles, and one way of doing that is to pair up with values-aligned companies to fight hard-right politics and fear-mongering.
Yeah, and look, one of the charities that we worked with recently said to us, we finally figured you Lush people out. You're really a campaigning company who use your shops as a front. And I think that's quite a good observation, really. But, you know, I guess really what we're trying to do is just share what works and hope that it's appealing for other companies to follow. We've learnt that by pulling together very passionate individuals and pairing up with amazingly expert organisations like GetUp, we create the opportunity to use our business as a tool to affect the social and political change that we want to see. Because ultimately, it's the customer that gets to choose the kind of world they want to live in every time they open their wallets. So I would encourage you to be meaningful and be specific. We might be a Vegemite brand after all, but we are happy for people to love or hate us for a little bit more than our smell. Thank you.